What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to show you how I'm going to transplant my Yucca cane plant. As you can see, it is getting rather large. It is in desperate need of repotting. Little fun fact, these guys love to be root bound, but I think I waited a little bit too long on that because his roots are growing out of the bottom of the pot, and he can't even stand up straight. He's got to lean back. But I wanted to go ahead because I've gotten several requests on when I was going to replant and how I did it. So today I wanted to show you how I would replant my Yucca cane plant. Now, of course, I've got all my trusty tools here. I've sanitized my pruning shears and my root rake. I lost my root rake and I thought I was going to die. I lost my root rake and I lost my root hook. But with one of these guys, you can figure out how to transplant a lot quicker. I mean, especially if you have really dry and compacted soil, it will take you forever to be able to definitely prune down the roots and cut it all back to put it into a smaller pot, or just give your plant all around room in general. But this will cut your time at least by half with one of these gorgeous beautiful things right here. Of course, in Kentucky we have really crazy weather. It is the middle of May, and temperatures outside are in the 30s and 40s, upper 50s during the day. So these guys are not really frost tolerant. Cold hardy plants. Some species of yucca are cold hardy, but this yucca cane plant is not. And I've been getting a lot of questions about the yucca cane plants where people, I think, just really don't know what they're doing, and they're probably overwatering these guys. And as you can tell, I will scoot him over just a little bit so that you can get a better shot, but he is rather large. He's put on a lot of mass. And he does have a little bit of some yellowing leaves. And as I was saying, the roots are starting to come out the bottom of the pot here. And you can really kind of push on it and see how full that is. So it is definitely time to go ahead and repot. But before I did, I just wanted to go ahead and talk about this plant and tell you a little bit about it. It's native to the desert areas around Mexico and Guatemala. So first and foremost, this plant, especially well-established plants, are drought tolerant. So they do not need a lot of water at all. Now, if you look it up online, I believe it says that they can get by with watering every 1 to 2 weeks. I've never lived in a desert, but I know it doesn't rain that often in a desert. So these plants don't need a whole lot of water. So if you're seeing a lot of yellowing leaves, the first indication that you are overwatering is going to be the yellowing of the leaves. The leaves are going to shrivel up, turn yellow, and probably turn brown, and just look unsightly, and you'll have to go ahead and cut all that off. Another reason why you might be getting yellow leaves is because the plant is not getting the right amount of light. Now, it also says on there that they like bright, indirect light. That is for plants that are inside all the time. They don't get a whole lot of light inside your house, but they do like bright kind of shade. And if they are established plants, you could go ahead and get away with giving them a lot of direct sunlight. But if they've sat in your house for a long time, they haven't had a lot of direct sunlight, so you need to introduce them into the sunlight slowly because these leaves will burn. But a lot of people that put them in pots will go ahead and set them outside for the spring and summer times. And after you've acclimated them rather slowly, they'll be fine to get some direct sunlight. Now, I put mine outside in the spring and summertime. But now I can't just because the weather's been a little off. So I've got him sitting inside, and I can tell he's desperate to get some better sunlight. So I'm going to go ahead and repot him, and I want to show you what I'm going to have to do in order to keep all this mess to a minimum because he is a rather large plant, and these guys do get to be an impressive size. But fortunately, that does take a while, so we will go ahead and transplant him. Now, one of the reasons I like these plants is because they're not really prone to a lot of pests. I know spider mites don't really like yucca plants, but mealybugs and scale do. So you got to be careful of that. But that's really only the kind of pests that really kind of affect these plants. For the most part, it's not really that big of a deal. And these guys are a little healthy. And they don't have a whole lot in the way of pests. So if you've ever had any kind of problem with a lot of that, yucca plant is definitely a good plant to have. Now, all I'm trying to do, I know a lot of this is behind the table and you can't see it, but I'm going to go ahead and start trying to loosen up the pot some. With all this mass in there, it's going to take a while. So all I need to do is just kind of use my legs and just kind of squeeze the pot to kind of loosen that soil up and hopefully just kind of pull the pot off. Now I do have a little container underneath this table to try and catch a majority of this mess. Now really all I'm doing is just trying to loosen up this root ball and pull the pot down. So there's holes in the bottom of the pot. I'm using my finger to kind of push up through and push all that mass up, and then to kind of pull the plant container back with my hands. All while trying to work it around and squeeze it so that it does loosen it up some. I'm just going to go ahead and cut off some of these roots right here because they are kind of holding him in there pretty good. Alright, got him out. Now, as you can tell, he is rather root bound. These plants like that, so it's not that big of a deal. But I think he was overdue for a repot. Now, all I will do is hold him with one hand. You may need somebody to actually help you out with all this because this is a little heavy. And then you'll just kind of brush all this off gently with the trash can underneath you. Now, if you could imagine how hard this would be if I was doing this by hand. And just kind of gently pull back and untangle the roots. Now a little word of caution, these yucca plants are slightly toxic to your pets and to us. So if you have cats or dogs, make sure while you're doing this you put them up or outside. Just because this will make a little bit of a mess and you don't want nobody coming in and chewing on any root pieces when you're not looking. Now, as I was saying, these roots are very hard, and the plant likes to be kept dry, so it's going to take a while to get through all this mass, but just stay patient and be gentle. And you're just trying to gently encourage the roots to become detangled. You don't want to pull really hard. And as I always say, you can remove up to 3/4 of a plant's root mass without causing any harm to that plant. So you'll lose some roots, and that's the point of this, to prune it all back and give your plant ample room in the pot. I'm not sure if I said this, but you definitely want to make sure that you do sanitize your root rake or your root hook, because you will be kind of stabbing into your roots. And then you can transmit diseases that way if it's not clean. So anytime before and after you use it, I always go ahead and sanitize my tools. Alright, now all we're trying to do is loosen up this root ball and this root mass and take off some mass so that when we put it in the pot, it'll have ample room to grow. Now that I've loosened up most of where I want the root ball to be, I'm going to go ahead and start pruning the roots back. Now this is a really good time to kind of get up close and personal with your plant. Check out the roots. Use your senses. Do you smell anything? Anything that kind of smells off-putting or may all around just kind of look black and mushy, or doesn't really look consistent to the rest of the roots, or feels different? You may have root rot if any of these kind of come up. Just depends on your plant and how often you water it. Now don't forget, they are desert dwellers. These guys thrive on neglect. So you do not need to be feeding your yucca a whole bunch, and you do not need to be watering it a whole bunch either. It rains a lot in Kentucky, so if I set my plant out, I do not water it when it's out there. Mother Nature will take care of that. And sometimes if you are in a place like Kentucky that gets a lot of rain, you may have to intervene and make sure that your plant isn't getting too much water, because root rot and overwatering is the leading cause of death for a potted yucca plant. With this guy, now going into the summer, I water him about once every 3 to 4 weeks. Now, as the heat index goes up, I will start to increase that. But now, I'm not watering him that often, and that's kind of where he likes it. So, if your yucca plant is dropping leaves, turning yellow, getting brown spots, any of that, examine your watering schedule. You may be watering it too often. Use your fingers, stick it down in the root mass, down in there in the root ball, and if it feels wet at all, do not water him again. Give him a while. Give it at least 3 or 4 days to dry out, and then check it again. And if it's completely dry, you could probably wait a second, maybe another day, and then water. Now, along with my leaves are turning yellow and falling off, I get a lot of, my yucca has brown tips, brown spots. This kind of comes in from your fertilizer salts, fluoride toxicity, and an irregular watering schedule, kind of water stress on the plant. And if you see any of those signs, the best way to combat that is to leach out the soil and use a lot of water to make sure that you can drain out all the fertilizer salts that are down in there, and the fluoride toxicity too. Now, you'll have to do it in installments, because if you do it all right away, you'll end up giving your plant root rot. So when you do water and you're worried about fertilizer salts or fluoride toxicity, make sure you water a lot, but do it rather infrequently. And with this guy, I just feed him once a year. A general all-purpose kind of fertilizer that's for just about any kind of indoor plant. I will feed it once a year, just usually in the spring, and that's it. Like I said, these guys thrive off of neglect. So if you're fertilizing it a lot and giving a lot of water, your plant will respond by dropping leaves, turning yellow and unsightly, or maybe even dying. So make sure you're not doing too much for your yucca. These are great house plants to have because they don't require a lot of care. All I'm doing is taking my fingers and kind of working through all this dirt to kind of knock off any excess that I don't want there, and then cutting off any roots that are rather long. And then you'll get to a spot that looks like you haven't even touched it. So just take your root hook or your root rake and just go to town. Now I'll just cut off the rest of these really big roots, and I think we'll be at a stopping point. Alright, now as I was saying earlier, you definitely want to make sure you get the right kind of substrate that will be most beneficial for your plant. That means that you want something that's really quick draining, something that's very porish, something that's not going to hold on to water forever. You'll also want to make sure that your pot has adequate drainage holes in the bottom of it. And then we will go ahead, since we've got the root ball right to where I want it to be, and add in some soil for the bottom of the pot. Fill it up just about halfway. Kind of make a little indentation there so the root ball will fit in there rather nicely. Start to add some substrate. And dump your soil everywhere. As I said, you want substrate that's going to drain quickly, but it's also going to be heavy enough to hold this massive plant upright. So as you're adding soil in, don't forget to tamp it down to rid your root mass of any air bubbles that may be down in there. And then that'll also help you, or your plant rather, to kind of help hold itself up in there. And you're going to want to make sure that all the roots are covered up, especially the smaller ones towards the top. And you want to put the subsoil back up to about where it was. So I'm going to tamp all that down. And then I'll add the last little bit in there. Now, of course, you can add in some horticulture grade sand, some perlite, or builder's sand, or pumice. Any of that in there with your substrate or soil, and that will help it drain quicker also. And then while I'm back here, I'm going to trim off some of this dying yellow leaves. And he looks right as rain. Alright, now typically what I do after I repot a plant is I go ahead and give it some water. But while I was in there with the roots, I could tell and feel that it was slightly wet. So I'm going to give it a day or two before I even think about giving him water. And now that the summer is starting to come back, hopefully I will set him outside and he will get more light and more air and just be all around more happy out there. Like I said, if you do start to see a lot of yellowing of the leaves, examine your watering schedule. It may be that you are overwatering it, and that is the leading cause of death for a potted yucca cane plant, is overwatering. Another reason could be fertilizer salts or anything else that could lead to browning tips of leaves, or the humidity. Now, so they are in the desert, so they don't like a whole lot of rain, but they do like some humidity. Soil-wise, you want your pH to be around 5.5 up to 7.5. So they like it slightly acidic, but they also like it kind of neutral as well. And then do not overfeed, because a lot of salts will build up in there and you will end up killing your plant or choking your plant out. So just be mindful of the water, be mindful of the fertilizer and the light, because established plants like more direct sunlight, but ones that you have just bought that have sat in a store for a while will probably need to be introduced into the hot direct sunlight slowly. As I said, they aren't too susceptible to pests. You really kind of have to just worry about mealybugs and scale. But other than that, the really only problem that comes along with these guys is just overwatering, because they do not need a whole lot of water. I think he looks rather good in there and is rather happy. Alright guys, well that's really all I wanted to show you for today, just to tell you how to repot this guy, and then also show you how to make a mess too. So be prepared to clean up, because like I said, if you have one of the larger ones like I do, you're in for a treat. It may take a little while, but it is a necessity. So to keep your plant happy and healthy, make sure that you do repot it. And like I said, they do like to be root bound, so you do not need to repot, but every 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years. Just kind of pay attention, and with all the mass that I just took off of his roots, I probably won't even think about repotting him for another 3 years. Alright guys, well that's really all I wanted to say about repotting a yucca cane plant. If you do have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them down in the comment section. I'll try my best to get back to every single one of them. But the ones that are constructive, I try to answer first. Other than that, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy, have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube. Real quick, I wanted to thank my Patreon supporters. Gabriel and Pam donated this month. If you would like to support my channel, please check the description box for a link below to my Patreon.